just a boy. Christmas brought so much joy. Couldn't wait for the presents and laughter. I couldn't sleep late at night, looking for Santa with lights. Those are the memories I still remember. Then I became a man, lost sight of who I am, but right in front of me was the answer. 'Cause on Christmas I feel joy, and I turn back to a boy. The answer is to stay young forever. This is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song.
Hello, Star Wars fans. You know, there's just 95 days until Christmas 2023. Can you believe it? It's already late September before we know it, and we're gonna be right into the Christmas season. Of course, we can't skip Thanksgiving, Halloween, all that good fun. And today, many of you know, a year ago, my dad was involved in a really severe accident. Today is my dad's birthday. So super excited. This evening we'll be going to dinner together. What a fantastic opportunity. Get to spend another birthday with my dad, considering the what could have been. So happy to be here with all of you today. And we've got a really special guest today. I was shocked and stunned, surprised, and extremely thrilled when I saw my good friend Star Wars Meg come on for today. Hello.
Hello, Santa. Hello, everyone. Happy birthday to your dad, by the way.
Thank you for that. I'll let him know. So we're gonna talk about this episode. There's a couple other things kind of happening real fast. We'll just talk about, but we won't spend a lot of time on those. We'll spend most of the time talking about this episode. The one is, did you see Bespin Bulletin's article just a few minutes ago?
I did. It's so exciting. Or it would have been exciting.
And who knows, right? Like, it's still something that could happen. We don't know.
I do have, I guess it's one question for Jason, because I think he's going live about it. But there's something that was said in 2018 by Diego Luna that makes me think, did he know something? Because Diego Luna always said that his favorite character was Jabba the Hutt. And he said it at a time where I think maybe Lucasfilm were planning a Tatooine movie. Just trying to connect the dots there.
Yeah, and Jason may expand on it here in a little bit. I know and I see he's going live in just a few minutes, so we'll try to make sure we don't step on his toes too much. But yeah, for those who haven't seen Bespin's article, Guillermo del Toro reveals he was attached to a Star Wars movie. What do you think? Any chance? And I know I haven't really read the article too much. I scanned through it real quick, and I know that he and Jason will probably be talking about it here in just a few minutes. Chances he would come back to do it, or that they'll revive it, or anything will come of it, or is it dead?
Again, it's for those guys who know way better than me about these kind of things, but I would say Lucasfilm would do really well to do that kind of project, because to casual fans, Jabba the Hutt is probably one of the most important villains in all of Star Wars.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and that he was included in some like cameo uh, capacity in the prequel trilogy, but then of course expanded on in the Clone Wars animated series. Just shows the importance of Jabba the Hutt. If you're going to talk about somebody like Boba Fett being important, Jabba the Hutt, I would argue, is more.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think for me, Jabba is symbolic, I think, as a character of so many other connections. Because in the comics and in the novels, in the Clone Wars, even as you say, there's tie-ins to other characters. You could have Boba Fett, Greedo, Han Solo, Chris Hanton, Chewie. You could do anything with it.
Oh yeah. Oh
They
yeah.
could do the rise of Jabba the Hutt.
Well, you could absolutely have um, uh, something based around the Hutt clan, um, because the extended family. You want to talk about like a crime boss family when you get into some of the uh, movies like Godfather and uh, series that have been on different services. The Hutts stand right up there and could definitely be like, how do you get into your positions of power? Some of that's been told in little bits and pieces in other um, media. We've got uh, how Jabba and well, what's her name? That had right before the prequels. In one of the novels, there's a story about how um, one of his what's the other hut? Radula.
Gordula.
Yeah, she was brought in to um, uh, have control over Tatooine right before we go into the prequels, and then there's a whole kind of positioning for power, and Jabba gets put in instead of her, just as the prequels are starting. So there's
Mhm.
a lot that could be told there, and Jabba's rise to power, be epic, be fantastic.
I
So
also think Gardula was Shmi's first owner.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yes. And then uh, Watto ends up getting Shmi in sort of that exchange of power that happens when Gardula is kind of pushed out of Tatooine. And it's Gardula that set up the pod racing syndicate there and was going to benefit from all of the proceeds coming from it. Um, and a lot of this story is told um, in in a book now that doesn't have is non-canon, right? It's in the Plagueis novel. There's a good bit of it. Um, so that's why I know so much of it, because you guys have made me read that novel too many times. So that's all good. Hey, so we've talked enough about other stuff. This episode of Ahsoka, and Roland, I see you there. Roland is in the backstage. I'll bring him in just a minute, but I want to make sure I get a conversation with you first. Um, episode 6. I know you absolutely loved it. Um,
I did.
yeah. So you want to just give us a brief how you doing after sitting on it for a couple of days?
I think I like it more. And I wasn't being hyperbolic when I said I think it's some of the best recent Star Wars in live action, because it was just the complete package of what Star Wars should be, with the villains and the Night Sisters, the Force, the silliness with the Noti turtles or crabs, whatever they are. It had everything that a Star Wars episode should have. And I prefer it to episode 5 because it didn't rely, I think, on member berries in the same way. This is like Thrawn in the next chapter in in a period we've never seen him in canon, and we're
There's
learning about his plan.
Oh yeah, yeah, and there's so much, and I know that they did some discussions with Timothy Zahn just as the series was coming out, go all the way back to Celebration, beginning of summer, and Timothy was consulted by Dave Filoni a little bit in doing the show, but then they asked Timothy about future Thrawn stories, and he said there's 10 years of story that he'd like to tell. And I would love to see what Thrawn and Ezra have been doing over these 10 years. Now, I know a lot of people don't read the novels, so it would be kind of a smaller audience, but I'm up for it. I would read them. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you've read the Thrawn trilogies, the recent canon ones.
No, I know a little bit about them from you and a couple of YouTubers who've talked about them,
Would
but I've
would
not
you
read any of the recent ones.
would you read a new series set in this time frame, the 10
Yes,
years?
because Zahn has said explicitly he wants to connect it to Snoke.
That would be fascinating. I don't know how you would connect Thrawn to Snoke. Well, it has to happen after this. But what about the
It's got
time?
to be through Ray Sloan, the other Grand Admiral. She's in the unknown regions, and Hux is helping her, and I think that's the connection. So I think Grand Admiral Thrawn believes he's the last Grand Admiral, and something tells me the Shadow Council is not being forthcoming with their own private little projects.
Oh
Like, I
yeah.
don't think Thrawn's aware of Hux's Snoke clones, and I don't think Pelion is aware of. I can't remember the woman who was in that meeting, but there was some interesting information on Wikipedia about her, and it's to do with militarization. And I thought, I don't think Thrawn is aware of any of this.
I don't think he's aware of any of it either. Last thing he saw was he had a little battle with the Grisk, um, dealing with the building of the Death Star, and then he goes back to uh, Lothal, has the run in with Ezra, and off they go. I don't know that he knows anything that's going on since then, like the destruction of the Death Star 2, the Emperor's fall, any of it. I think he's out of the loop. And I'm curious to see how he responds when he gets brought into the loop, right? And I'm very curious in this galaxy. So they're at the planet of Peridia in this other galaxy. How many other planets have inhabited life of some sort, fully developed cultures and things like that we could have seen Thrawn going around? Like there's been a discussion perhaps of the Rakatans. Are the Rakatans out there? Have they been out there? Are they part of the story or not? There's a lot to tell and potential for a whole new set of stories to be told from this other galaxy.
I do have to wonder, has Morgan Elsbeth told Thrawn that Palpatine is dead?
Right. Who knows? Because
Because at the moment, I don't know why Thrawn wants to come back to the galaxy. Like, what's the purpose for him to come back? And why does he need an army?
Yeah, you wouldn't know if you haven't read the books. There's no way to know. And those are great questions that I think need answered in the story, because we can't expect people to go read the books to find about motivation. It's one of the things that in this episode, I think for me, it's not quite a 10 out of 10 kind of thing. I keep bouncing between like an 8.5 and a 9. I think I'm going to settle like a 8.75 for me, because if people don't know how they got there, Thrawn and Ezra, right? If you haven't watched Rebels, You haven't talked to people about Rebels. You've just watched the Mandoverse shows, the Disney Plus shows, the movies. One, you don't know who Thrawn and Ezra are at all. Secondly, you don't know how they got there. And at the end of the episode, there's this interaction between Ezra and Sabine that was frustrating to me because it's like, let's talk about it later. Right? I just want to bask in, us getting back together. I was like, there's a sense of urgency that I felt that I didn't feel that Sabine conveyed. So it's me, right? I'm just like, I wanted more, and I knew I shouldn't. So there's that.
Do you know what surprised me about this episode? Sabine wasn't fazed by the Night Sisters, considering she was literally possessed by Night Sisters in Rebels. It kind of was weird to me that she wasn't terrified it would happen again.
Yeah, good point. Good point. There's but again, I don't think most people know that, right? But so there's things that I'm like conflicted, and I'm going to ask you, and I'll bring Roland in just a second. I want to ask you, do you have non-Star Wars people in your life that are watching this and have given you any feedback, or you've asked them
Yes.
questions? How are they dealing with it?
I've noticed that a lot of them really enjoy it, but they ask me a lot of questions about who certain people are. And I know someone who's seen Star Wars Rebels, but didn't realize that the bearded guy was Ezra.
Fair. Although I saw somebody show a picture of Ezra's dad and Ezra here, and it's remarkable. The similarity is fantastic, and I thought, well, that's a great attention to detail. The actor casting, first of all, is great, and then just the way his hair is done, the way that his appearance is really good. I've got a couple of folks, and I put it on my Discord this morning. My wife is completely disinterested. She's checked out. She's gone. Doesn't care at all. And she knows she'll sit and watch it with me, but and I'm interacting with the show, right? I'm laughing, I'm talking, I'm like smiling. I get excited and I cheer. There's all of this stuff happening with me as I'm watching the show. And she's like, you're being awful noisy. I'm trying to, and I'm like, I'm enjoying this thoroughly. And she's disinterested. She doesn't understand the motivations of people. She doesn't understand the characters. She doesn't care to know the characters. She's just checked out. And then last night at our Bible study, one of my best friends in the world, in real life, he's I've known him for 20 years, the better part of 20 years. He's been a huge Star Wars fan. He is not a fan of the Disney Lucasfilm era as a whole. And he said this is the best Star Wars that of the Disney Lucasfilm era entirely. Better than the movies, better than any other shows. This is his absolute favorite. So to me, just in my life, it seems like folks who are more invested in Star Wars, people who are more engaged with the content outside of just these Disney Plus shows, are the ones who are enjoying it more. Would you say that's true in your life as well, or no?
I think so. I've seen some more casual fans say they still prefer the movies, like the sequel trilogy and Rogue One. I know some people who've seen all of these shows, much more on the casual side, and they still say they don't hold up to Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. So that's interesting, and I don't necessarily agree, but I can see that perspective.
Yeah, I can too. It's it's. I'm more and more convinced as we get further and further along that we've got a diversity of flavors of Star Wars, and people are going to have flavors they like better than others. And for a lot of folks, this Ahsoka series is is delicious, right? And I keep hearing the phrase like, "We like what Dave Filoni's cooking," and I agree with that. I think he's put together a fantastic series. He's representing Star Wars more faithfully to what George Lucas envisioned Star Wars than perhaps anybody outside of George Lucas has ever done, ever. Um, I'm going to say something else, and I want to get your feedback on this as well. And I had a little chat with, or a little back and forth with Nikki, earlier this week. To me, this episode 6, felt like a love letter to George Lucas. So much of what was in this episode is included in other Lucasfilm, not just Star Wars, but you go into uh, Willow and other projects that George worked on. You could see influences throughout that in this episode. To me, it felt like it connected really strongly and faithfully to George in an honorific kind of way. Um, what do you think? Am I stretching? Do you feel the
Not
same?
at all. You're not stretching at all. Even from when Hu Yang says, you know, talks about the history of the galaxy, and Ahsoka says part one is the best. That's Dave Filoni being like, George's prequels are the best. That's what that was telling the audience. Part one of 3 is the prequel trilogy, and I think it was a little out of universe, a bit of dialogue. So I
Hmm.
enjoyed that. Of course, the turtle crabs, that was very George as well. I'm trying to think what else they did that was out of Lucas's playbook.
Well, I mean, just the look of the planet was very Dune-like. We know that George was heavily influenced with Dune in putting together the original trilogy and the concept of the whole story overall. Um, there's some of that. Certainly the dialogue, the creatures. The creatures are straight, like those howlers. Howlers, you go back to like the Ewok movies, and um, uh, they look very similar. Well, Ewok movies uh, and
Willow.
Willow, yeah, right. Those howlers are perfect. All of the puppet creatures, very Jim Henson-y, kind of like Jim Henson kind of influence, and that George used directly. I think it's all fantastic. So, yeah. Let me bring Roland in. I've promised him I let him in. So hey, Roland,
Hey,
you've been listening in. What are your thoughts on this episode?
I really enjoyed it. I see a lot of people out there saying it was filler, and I completely disagree.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think so whatsoever. I think it was a really good episode. It gave us finally some context for those who didn't watch Rebels or read the old books and knew Ezra and Thrawn were. 'Cause I've seen a lot of people out there going, well, why do I care about Ezra? Why am I afraid of Thrawn? And I think now you're going to get that in the next 2 episodes. It's fully going to be explained to these people who don't understand, the more casual fans. And I just really loved it. I think, again, the cinematography was amazing. The Kiners are killing it with the music. And I thought it was great. I really liked it. And I'm with Meg. I actually liked it more than 5 because it didn't rely on the member berries. And I finally got to see Thrawn, which I've wanted since I was a little kid and read Heir to the Empire. So that was good for me.
Very good. Very good. And RG Energy says, who's this Rolo guy?
That's my co-host on my show. Mike, nice to meet you.
Very good, RG Energy. Thanks. No, this is if you're one of our patrons or you're a channel member, I've posted the link to join the show on Patreon. I've posted it in YouTube for members and also in our members only area of Discord. So anybody who wants to join the discussion today, who's a channel member or patron, you can find the links there. So out of 10, Roland, where would you put it?
After watching it a couple times, I gave it a 7 on first watch. I think I'm more towards an 8 now. So like an 8 out of 10.
Perfect. And then let me ask both of you, because it's one of the things I'm still kind of stuck on and I need some help with. Sabine's interaction with Ezra at the very end of the episode. When Ezra's asking her about how did she get there, she's like, "We could talk about that later." Does that bother you at all? It bothers me a lot, and I can't get
me too.
Meg, how are you on that?
On what? Sorry.
On Sabine and Ezra at the end. Ezra wants to know, how did you get here? What's going on? And she's like, "We can talk about that later." I feel like the sense of urgency is way higher than Sabine is reflecting, and it bothers me. It's something I can't quite get over. Are you okay with it, or how do you like? Is it?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
It might be a thing of in the next episode, Sabine says to Ezra, "There's something I've got to tell you about what happened to Ahsoka." And then Ahsoka shows up right behind you.
No, that could happen. Which raises another question that I'm really curious about, because we've got some other stuff in universe. Like Thrawn knew that Ahsoka was apparently dead, and she's not. Right, so he has this discussion with Morgan, like, how could you be fooled by a Jedi? They pull these tricks all the time. Does he know that the Emperor's dead? Do you think he has any idea what's going on? Has Morgan shared anything else with him? I know, Meg, you and I talked about it just a moment ago, but just to that question specifically, what do you think Thrawn knows about what's going on in the universe?
Well, I mean, considering that somehow he's been in contact with Elsbeth, I think she had to have filled him in. Like, I think they've been trying to get him back for a while. Maybe not necessarily during the OT. Like, they might not have had the way yet. But after the Emperor fell, I think she might have been able to find some sort of way to like maybe she got contacted herself. And, knowing that she was, a good ally of Thrawn's at one point, then she ends up getting contacted, and she's like, "Here's the TLDR, where I'm explaining all of it to you real quick. This happened. There's this guy named Luke Skywalker. You missed out on a lot. Kind of wish you were here." I could see it kind of being like that. I think he knows now. That's because otherwise, why wouldn't the Empire have shown up if they were still around? They would have gone with Elsbeth. So I think he knows. I think he knows that they've fallen and they're in disarray. And Pelion mentions that in Mandalorian. In season 3, he says Thrawn's working on his own thing. So somehow Pelion's in contact with Thrawn too, I believe. But I don't know how. It seems like maybe he's in contact with Elsbeth, who's therefore in contact with Thrawn.
I think not, but just leave that. That's my opinion. I think he's saying you guys have been waiting for Thrawn, and perhaps Palion's even waiting for Thrawn, but they think that he will be back, but he hasn't yet returned. Meg, what do you think Thrawn knows?
It's a good question. I think he might be drawing upon whatever it is Balin is looking for this knowledge, because in Rebels he speaks to the Bendu. What if there's like another force being that's guiding him along this whole process, like an ancient Dathomirian deity?
Well, and we hear the Dathomiri, right? Those mothers talk about the fates have said this or that, right? So I think the Dathomiri mothers have been tapping into information, how much information they have, and what they've been able to communicate over all this distance is really tough to know. I'm hoping we find out very soon as we get into the next part of the story. There's a question Mike Porter asked. At this point, as we stand today, which would be your favorite show as a whole, all seasons together? Mandalorian. Oh, no, he put it different. Mandalorian season 1, Mandalorian season 2, Andor, or Ahsoka. Now he's leaving out some of the ones that are more controversial, right? Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett. So out of those 4, where you stand today, which would be your favorite?
Oof. Oh, difficult. Because season 2 of Mando is pretty good, but a lot of that, like Meg mentioned earlier, is member berry stuff. I loved Andor. I know I'm in the minority there, so I guess I'd have to say Andor. I was more. I mean, I'm also biased because I like Cassian as a character like a lot. So yeah, I would have to say. I mean, there's some great stuff in Mando. I mean, I think Mando 1 was near perfect. So maybe Mando 1 actually over Andor.
Meg, how would you break that out?
I'm going to say it's a tie between Andor and Mando 2.
And then
Because the way Mike Porter worded it was per season. Because Andor would normally win, but Mando season 2 for me was just. I think it was the first time in a live action show we had that many member berries, and they were all pretty unexpected. There were rumors of Ahsoka for months, but it was special. I think we came together as a fandom in that finale, but that only lasted like 2 months before everyone was divided again, and there was drama in the real world, and there was the Gina Carano thing, but while it lasted, fans were like really on board with Luke's appearance at the end of Mando.
yeah.
That was a really beautiful 2 months for everybody to actually love it.
So then where would you put Ahsoka after those 2? Is she third ahead of Andor, or would you put Andor ahead of Ahsoka as we stand today?
As of now, I would put Andor ahead, but I don't know what's to come for the next 2 episodes. I would put Andor ahead just for the storytelling of itself and how it was very condensed. There was a lot of nuance to all these different characters. They were very fleshed out, in my opinion. And season 1 of Ahsoka so far, the first 3 episodes until the end of episode 3, now Ahsoka's caught up to where the audience is.
Mm-hmm.
So not a ton happens in the second or third episode of Ahsoka compared to, I mean, not a lot happens in Andor, arguably in 4, 5, and 6, but I think as of now I'm putting Andor a little bit ahead of it, but I'm also, again, a little bit biased, and I'm also taking the cinematography and the use of real sets in the real world, not using the volume, stuff like that. So if you remove that, I'm loving Ahsoka more as a Rebels and Clone Wars fan.
Yeah. Meg, where would you put Ahsoka and Andor if you had to rank the 2?
I'm still going to give the edge to Andor,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think at this point in Andor season 1, if I'm not mistaken, we had the start of the heist on Aldhani.
Yep.
And that was just fantastic television.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, that was like Apple TV level show in terms of intensity. And I didn't expect it. So I really hope Ahsoka delivers in the last 2. And I'm only saying Andor because I don't know how Ahsoka's going to finish.
Right.
But I have a feeling Ahsoka could very well take the top spot for my favorite live action show by the end.
And I want to mention
agree.
only one Kenobi. He is he's getting healthy. He contracted the virus, and he's home quarantined, recovering, unboxing toys and posting videos, but also sick. So only one. Get healthy, my friend. Get healthy. It's great to have you here. And I think the reason we get him during the live stream is because he's sick. He can't go anywhere, so he's stuck watching Santa. I appreciate it. Only one. Take care. Hey, Royal Farm Boy has been in the back. I'm going to bring him in. And hey, you've been hearing the discussion to this point. What are your thoughts?
Yippers, howdy, Patreon friends. My thoughts on part 6.
Yeah.
Again, I was just floored. Knowing the things that we learned previously in the week, I'm able to take that part of my brain and turn it off. The things that we discussed last week after the live stream, and some of the fun stuff that Jason's stirred up. Yeah, I go put that right down over there, and then I just sit down and I'm just like, Santa knows how I do this. Tell me a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wow.
I'm those 4 choices: Mando 1, Mando 2, Andor, and Ahsoka. They're all like top tier Star Wars for me. So I don't know how I would, sort them out. It probably depends on mood of the day. Because they're all really, really strong entries for Star Wars, and they're all a bit different. So it's like, which do you like better today, apples or oranges? Well, kind of depends on your mood. Like, it's like, I don't know how to pick. So,
Santa also knows this about me, is I don't favor any Star Wars over any other Star Wars. So to answer Mike's question, I would say the last one that I watched, that's my favorite one, or the next one I'm going to watch. So right now, Ahsoka is my favorite, but I love the other ones all just as much.
Okay.
So I talk about this on Saturdays. I sit down with my friend Jeff in the Blue Milk Cafe podcast. And he's just like me. He's a couple years younger than me. I always go in, like I said, I go in to watch Tell Me a Story. I don't go looking for different things. Like I've already heard probably a half a dozen folks in my workday playlist today saying that they could see the volume, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, don't take yourself out of it. Go in with the wonder of Tell Me a Story and pay attention to all the details that's there. I don't see it volume.
Yeah, I want to go all the way back to Astromech Jeremy at the very beginning of the live stream. Astromech Jeremy is a great guy. And a wonderful fan. Just he's a very interesting individual as well. That is a guy that you want to get to know. He's just he's fantastic. But he mentioned how he's appreciative that Dave has brought a lot of wonder into the show, and I don't want to misquote him, but essentially that's how I'm reading it. And I love that it allows us to have, I love what it's doing for the fandom, right? We're able to have these fun speculation things. We're able to come up with some weird theories. And Meg leaned into this. Was it yesterday? I think so. You leaned really heavy into some theories. Like they're kind of out there, but it's fun. It's a ton of fun. And that we can do that with this series, to me, is gold. It's wonderful for the fandom. It allows us to enjoy something without having all the answers. I know there's some folks really complaining because they have more questions than answers, but to me, that's not necessarily bad.
No, we've always had that with Star Wars.
Yeah.
Santa and me know best. We've had it for 46 years.
Yeah.
Did you guys see Josh from Den of Nerds did a live stream the other day, I think it was Monday, where he went back and just looked at all of these old fan theories. There's been questions since 77. Like he found old interviews with people asking the questions back then, and they had these wild speculations after A New Hope came out. It was really fun going back and looking at all these different people's theories and stuff over the years.
One
Yeah,
that I remember.
I've heard a fair bunch just today. Me talking back to people talking to me from the past,
Yeah.
and they're coming up with. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not
Look,
going to be that.
I remember.
No, it's not going to be that.
I remember back to Empire Strikes Back, and before we had Return of the Jedi, and Vader saying, "No, I'm your father," and the fan speculation. Just, and I was a teenager. Right? I'm like 13 years old, and I'm wondering, is he lying? Like somebody's lying,
right?
So like Obi-Wan Kenobi said that Vader killed his father, and now Vader says that he is his father. Somebody's wrong, and is Vader manipulating Luke? And what's going on here? So, and I know Josh didn't talk about that one, but I specifically remember that. Like,
I've seen people talk about that before.
Yeah,
and of course, I love it. I think one of the biggest joys of being a Star Wars fan is finding the unicorn of the person who knows nothing about Star Wars and showing it to them, and they don't even know that Vader is, Luke's father. I had that experience with one of my friends. I was like, I don't know how you don't know this, but showing them that, they were like, "What? No way!" Like it was so fun. Like,
yeah.
Well, you know what, Roland? The key is to not show them the prequels first.
Yep, right. I always show them.
I made that mistake. I knew someone who had never seen Star Wars, and we watched them 1 to 6. So the original trilogy reveal had no impact on them. And I was like, okay, noted. Next time, it's 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
But Santa, what you said is so true about Empire, which is why the moment in Return of the Jedi where Yoda turns over in his bed and says, "Your father he is," was so impactful, because that was like confirmation.
Yeah. It was, and then it was just like, oh my God, how do I process this? And that Obi-Wan Kenobi's a big lying liar. Like, from a certain
point.
From a certain point of view.
Do you guys remember the Phantom Menace? And people were still confused if Palpatine and Sidious were the same person.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I wasn't old enough. I was 1 at the time, but I do remember people talking about that way later when I got into all this. I remember that being a speculation.
I remember that to some degree. I mean, it was obvious for those of us that were like involved. You knew, but the reveal as it was, as it unfolded, was fun to watch with casual fans that hadn't followed along so closely, right? Yeah, and I've seen some recent YouTube videos where people will do that, either with their kids. That's normally where I see it, where like, okay, the kids have finally gotten old enough that they could sit down and watch Star Wars, and they'll show them with their kids 4, 5, 6, and when they see Vader say, "No, I am your father," and the kids' reactions are just they're gold. They're absolute gold.
One with the little girl where she turns to her dad and she goes, "What?" And it's so good, man.
Exactly. Hey, I want to speculate a little bit. Of course, most of us follow Jason. We're aware of what's coming, but there's some speculation as well. And Meg, I know you talked about it a long time ago, but episode 7 coming up.
Yes.
There's the Reddit leaker said we were going to see C-3PO in episode 7. This guy hasn't gotten anything wrong yet. So C-3PO makes me think we're going to go back and see what's going on with Hera and the New Republic.
We should have probably prefaced this with a spoiler warning.
Oh, sorry.
Santa going right in with, "Yep, 3PO is next week."
Sorry.
Huge spoiler, but
yeah, this is Santa's channel, not making Star Wars.
My bad. No, go ahead, Meg.
I personally think Leia Organa is in the next episode. And I also know, if we're talking about spoilers, that in Rebels, when Ahsoka shows Ezra the hologram of Anakin, Well, there's another moment like that where she shows Hu Yang a hologram of Anakin.
Oh,
Cool.
yeah. Very interesting. I have so many questions, right? So all I know basically is that leak, right? That C3PO is supposed to be in 7. Is there anything else that this has slipped my mind that we've heard from Jason or the Reddit guy on episode 7?
I have one.
What's that?
They said they made a massive Lothwolf head.
Well, that's debatable.
I don't know if that's still a thing, but I remember Jason talking about that like last year. But
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would
Didn't
be
they isn't that just what Howler was?
I think
The
that's
thing
what-
that Sabine rode?
I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Doom. I think it was.
Yeah,
think
I was
that.
chatting with Jason after the show aired and after he did his breakdown. We were almost certain, Jason as well, that the wolf that we heard about and that he shared in his leaks is going to be a howler, not a lone wolf. But yeah, so I don't know. There's so much I want to know with what's going on with Thrawn, Sabine, and Ezra. But if C3PO is in this next episode, we're going to go to the New Republic. How much of that is going to be New Republic? How much is going to be at Peridia? There's too much, right? there's too much content and not enough time, which I think is a pretty good problem in some sense of it. But I think you might be right. We might get a Leia. Here's the question: do we get just a Leia mention, or do we get to see her in like a hologram, or do we gonna get a full-on body like deep fake, de-aged Leia in the episode? What do you think, Meg?
I'm thinking if 3PO is there, Leia might be in the building, and they may just imply it because just to tease fans, and then maybe we see her in the background. I'm just thinking of like a low-cost way of doing it. It may be a bit too much of a risk to have like an extended sequence of her communicating with Mon Mothma. I'm thinking too much along the lines of Heir to the Empire, which would mean Han, Akbar. But again, with this new Senate, which is Mothma and Kaz's dad, can't remember his name, Senator Giono.
Amato Ziona.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very
I'm thinking it's just a mention, and 3PO is the big kind of main character we know from the originals. Because he's easy to do. Anthony Daniels is still around.
Sure, yeah, and there were some rumors way back when we heard about the droid series that was supposed to be in the works. We still don't know anything about.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to that.
Yeah, well, no, none of us do. But there was some rumors that he would gone in for some filming stuff, and certainly they could have shot some things with him that they're using here. Meg, you had another really good theory came through one of your comments, I think yesterday or earlier this week, but you shared it in your video today. And you just mentioned Heir to the Empire, so I bring it up now. RF Gaming says Reddit guy says no Leia. He's been spot on, so I'm inclined to think she doesn't appear. Did he say no Leia specifically?
He did.
Okay.
He did. I've got a screenshot of the bullet points for that episode. No, he's right. He said no Leia.
Oh, okay. Well, there
I
you
don't
go.
think they know how to do her yet. I feel like they might be thinking in a out of world, in real world, they might be thinking it's too soon. But I also think they just don't know how they're gonna fully get her going because when we see Luke in Mando and then we see Luke in Book of Boba Fett, he's mostly standing around, not really doing much action. When he is doing action, he had his hood up, and then we see him climb up the pole, like the bamboo, and we see him like train with the saber a little bit. That's a little easier than to have somebody actually running, firing a blaster, doing all that stuff. So I don't think they really quite know how to do it. Plus, it would open such a can of worms for them because then you'd have to bring Han at some point. Like if you bring Leia back, when you do all this, you're going to need Han, you're going to need Lando, you're going to need everybody. So
Well, that's some of the speculation, but and I want to, because Meg brought this up and you talked about it in your video, that perhaps what they're doing to make it more practical and to address some of what Roland is saying, that Ezra being a stand-in for Luke, and then what about Shin being a stand-in for Mara Jade?
I'd be
So
cool with that.
yeah, Meg, I know you touched on it today. You want to give folks your 2 cents on that?
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think Balin and Shin are going to try and work with Ezra and Sabine because they're aware that Thrawn doesn't care about them. And for Balin's goal, he needs Thrawn out the way. For Ezra's goal, they need Thrawn out the way. And it'd be really cool to see like a final big battle where all of these Force users get their lightsabers out. It's also why Balin cared enough to keep Sabine and not to throw her to the wolves, so to speak. He kind of implies that she's really important to them
Yeah,
because he knows she has lightsaber skills, and it could be a way for him to have a backup
yeah.
on his side.
And
I don't think Balin's a bad guy. I don't think they've set him up to be evil.
Me neither. And to
I
your
don't
point, Meg, I brought this up with Santa, I believe it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, that Balin clearly has a similar ability to Anakin with precognition. I think that, you know, when we see him when Sabine is about to shoot the map, you see him just stop and go, "You want to see your friend Ezra, don't you?" You know, and so I feel like he has the ability to just read people or maybe read the Force, the future, things like that. He might have already read Thrawn when he just met him, and he knows. So he's at this point, the enemy of my enemy becomes my friend. That's where I'm going with this.
He even said that. So there's as we start to do the Heir to the Empire comparisons. Of course, in Heir to the Empire, Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, integral to that story. I mean, they're absolutely central to it. And of course, Luke. And we've seen, and I think Jason Ward really opened my eyes to it more than a year ago. If they're borrowing certain story elements, but not the storyline, like we had Mount Tantus, right?
Yes.
We have things going on there, but it's not in the same context as we had in Heir to the Empire. We've got Thrawn in another galaxy, but it's not in the same context. We've got, if this is, and I love the theory of having Ezra and Shin be replacements for Luke and Mara.
Oh, I dig it.
What and again, they're not one for one. We can't think of them like they're going to fulfill the exact same roles, but they kind of character types. Who's the character type for Sabaoth? Is that Balin?
I think it's the Night Sisters
Uh-huh.
because Thrawn just wanted the Force ability
Yep.
that Sabaoth provided. And ironically, I think it's the Night Sisters who will kill Thrawn eventually.
Ooh,
Ooh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
yeah.
So
All
once,
right, I'll put that in my pocket. I'm not going to hold on to it too tight, but I'll have my pocket for now.
Oh,
Just
well,
a suggestion.
the one thing I see nobody talking about is it was either Balin or Thrawn. Somebody this last episode mentioned a greater threat.
Well,
And
I've been leaning into that, but that hasn't been something that's been expressed specifically yet.
sworn somebody in that episode was like, they said something about there being a greater threat.
Greater power.
Maybe that's what it was.
Balin talked about a greater power, and he says, "Can't you hear it?
Can't
Can't
you see
you
it?
see it?"
Do you think it's the Bendu?
Could it be the Bendu?
Well, we just saw him turn into a cloud. We don't really know what that meant. So
Yeah. So let's go around and ask that question. What do you think this greater power that Balin can see and hear is? Meg, do you have a theory?
I like your theory of the wills.
Yeah.
And when you watch the Night Sisters the Night Mothers in their configuration, you see some of those galactic circles that Yoda saw when he met the shamans of the wills. And I'm thinking it's something to do with them, a controlling force of the universe. I saw Den of Nerds suggested Abeloth,
That would be
which would be really bad news for our heroes.
bad news for everybody, I think.
I saw I think it was Ryan with Screen Crush
Oh, he's great.
picked up on a figure that kind of flew in the background that resembled it. I showed Meg a thing right before we came on live. I shouldn't have said it that way, but I showed Meg a clip right before we came on live that I think is a stretch, where somebody thinks that they may have saw the N1 new rock stars. Thinks he may have seen the N1 in the Purgle wake.
I saw you guys showing that in the back, and I'm with you. I don't think it's.
I don't think it's there.
It's trick of the light.
But Ryan picked up on this little flying creature in the background and made a speculation that it could have been the son. So the father, the son, and the daughter. The daughter, of course, and Namorai has been absent from this entire show. Don't know where it's been, but could it be the son?
Well, actually, yeah. I saw Ryan. I just watched Ryan's video on that last night, and I'm with you. I think that was actually a pretty interesting point, because if Morai turns into a smaller owl, then it would make sense that the sun would become a small bat, and maybe that greater power is the father somewhere. I mean, I know he's dead, but this planet could be connected to Mortis in some way.
So that's what people are starting to lean. Well, and people have been doing it since the whole show started.
Yeah.
Is trying to make a tie-in to Mortis. I think it's the Wills. Meg, gave it away, but I think it's the Wills, and I think he is after the Wills. I mentioned it during my breakdown yesterday in the rewatch that George Lucas had this concept of doing a microbiotic kind of trilogy focusing on the midichlorians and the Wills, and that the Wills were feeding off of the Force, and this rise and fall was helping that flow of the Force back and forth was the thing they're feeding on. That's and that Luke was going to discover this is the source of the rise and fall sequence, and was going to go try to stop the Wills, kill them, whatever, to stop this cycle repeating. And we hear Balin specifically talk about that, like this is an endless cycle of rise and fall, and he wants to put an end to it from the beginning, he says, right? So from the source.
And he brings up unity, doesn't he? He says something about like to destroy, to create unity. I think he says that to Shin at some point.
I think he just wants to get to the source of this whole thing, and I think it's the Wills. I think that's what it is. Astromech Jeremy said, my thoughts go here too, especially when Hu Yang began with a long time ago. Right? Lucas's original plan, the Wills, to be telling the story. I thought that was fun too. And Meg, you mentioned this, where Ahsoka mentions the stories of how she put it, but there's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and her favorite, of course, is chapter 1. So it leads to speculation. Is that sort of a meta of the original trilogy, prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, which would be kind of odd since the sequel trilogy wouldn't have happened at this time point, but or is it like episode 4, 5, 6, or is it like episode 1, 2, 3?
Right.
Do you think there's a meta in there for that, and how do you see that?
I absolutely do, and I definitely think it was meta. I think you can interpret it either as part one being 4, 5, 6, or part one being the prequels. And I just like the fact that in the Star Wars universe, that's how you tell a kid a bedtime story. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Like when I have kids someday, that's how I'm gonna start all my bedtime stories.
But you know, part one in universe is the Dawn of the Jedi. So in a sense, Dave is teasing Mangold's film.
Oh,
Ooh, good point.
Yeah, 25,000 years ago. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
and how fun was it that at Celebration he said we were going to see Ezra far, far away. Where was Ezra? He's far, far away.
Mhm.
And of course, the episode title was Far, Far Away. And that's when we see Ezra. So Dave putting in the story, chapter 1, 2, 3. I think Meg, you may have landed on it. I think you may have hit it. But again, it's great that we could speculate and come up with different theories. It's fun. It's so much fun.
It's fun to do this again. Like it's been a while since we've been able to really speculate on Star Wars.
I ain't much of one for speculating, and I'm right beside Santa with the wills, and you're not the only one with that. I've heard somebody, I can't remember whether it was today or yesterday. See, this happens when you get in 2 days' time, I get 60 podcasts in my ears. Can't remember who said what. But yeah, it's been mentioned on other audio stuff that I hear. I hear a lot of thoughts and opinions, lots.
Yeah.
So yeah, the wills for us that speculate some, like I don't much, but that makes sense. We'll see how it turns out.
Well, Meg was entirely gracious yesterday, and God bless you, Meg. I love you so much. She gave me a call out on her channel. You don't have to do that. I'm a nobody, and for you to mention me was amazing. But yeah, Meg mentioned it. So
I'm a nobody too. We're all equal as fans.
oh,
But
It's not about the amount
some-
of subscribers you have or views or anything. It's we're all fans of this thing we love that George created.
you're so great.
Yep, I can't wait to get home from work every day because she's the first thing that goes. Few things get me to put a pause on my playlist. Live chat like this with friends is one.
Yeah.
Going to sleep, obviously. Meg is one. Any live stream chats. If Jason goes live, it's paused because I'm in a chat.
Yeah,
I wake
she's
up every morning and I check to see if Meg posted a video, and then I watch that. And I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, speculation. This is great."
yeah. I think a lot of fans do that. We all look forward because of the time zone difference. Here in the States, we all wake up, and then as we get our day started, we look to see if Meg's posted a video yet. I think all of us
the
do that.
East Coast. I think
You're
it's
all
like,
wonderful. You're all so lovely.
oh,
Thanks.
thanks. I think it's like 9:00 usually East Coast time for me.
It varies.
There we go. Perfect.
It varies. All right, so I want to wrap up. Thank you all again. But anything else before we close up? Is there? I have a Mike Porter dad joke. Let me do that first, and then ask you if there's anything from this episode or speculation about the next episode you want to talk about before we sign off. But the Mike Porter dad joke is really good. He does a great job of trying to keep it current and on topic. And this one is absolutely that. It says, "What is the view like on this distant galaxy's planet? What's the view like on this distant galaxy's planet?" Well, it's very, very Peridia.
Only Mike Porter.
Only Mike Porter.
That's a well-crafted one right there.
It was really good, really well crafted. Yeah, Meg, any other thoughts about this chapter 6 that we've overlooked? There's so much. Oh, let me kind of cue it up and get your thoughts on it. Thrawn's undead troopers. What are your thoughts on them? You like them?
I like them. I think they're very creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And what's in the caskets or in those boxes?
I think they're very similar to what the Empire was pushing on Mount Tantis in the Bad Batch. I know this is a crazy suggestion, but we like crazy theories in the fandom. Imagine if they're all crosshair.
Oh wow, that'd be wild.
He would have had a chance because that's
What
a
if
long
Eon
time.
is a crosshair?
It was a long time ago, but they may have kept the template.
What if Snoke originated from Night Mother magic?
No, because when he gets sliced in half, he doesn't have the smoke that comes out of him.
No.
That's true. That's true. He doesn't.
And his body just slumps over. He's incorporeal form. He's real.
I heard it suggested that what could be in those boxes is raw material. Like we see that gold that's kind of put on a lot of stuff. The troopers, the of course the Chimera. If you went to a planet that was made of pure gold, might you want to take some gold back with you because it's a high value in the place you came from, but it's common here? Could it just be casket after, or case after case after case of, say, a precious metal, or are there bodies in there, or what?
I think since they mentioned that it's the catacombs, we could get something very similar to Clone Wars when they resurrected the Night Sister zombies. And I'm thinking, what would be a great thing to just drop on, I don't think it's Coruscant anymore, but whatever the capital is, you just drop a ton of zombies on there and wipe them out, because those things could take tons of laser bolts. They wouldn't even die when Grievous was cutting them up. He had to slice them into many pieces before they fell apart. They're powerful too. So I think that he's trying to bring back. I mean, we don't even know who they are. They might be grandmothers or great mothers that are dead.
The corpses. Being that we're headed into the finale in October, the creepiness of it being corpses and being undead like zombies fits so well with the holiday coming.
Oh,
right?
Halloween's my favorite holiday, so I'd be so cool with that.
Rural Farm Boy, do you have any speculation of what might be in those boxes, in those crates?
That makes the most sense. I mean, it's a catacombs on the homeworld of the Dathomiri witches. So they would bury their dead if they die in catacombs. So yeah, this could possibly be a repeat, just like Roland said.
3 days of loading, right? It's going to take 3 rotations to load all of them into the Chimera. That's a lot of dead bodies.
Yeah, that's a whole army right there.
Look, I think the potential of being dead bodies is high, very high.
So do you guys think they're putting this stormtrooper armor, the Night Sister robes, cloth over these dead Night Sisters, or are they different?
Oh,
I think they're dead troopers that have been reanimated,
sort of like
the
mummies,
cloth
where
to
you
hold
would
them together.
you would wrap a mummy in the cloth,
Mhm.
like maybe they've wrapped these dead in a cloth, in that red cloth.
What we see in Clone Wars and even in the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games, that the Night Sisters use their cloth a lot for actual abilities. I think that cutting a piece of that cloth, wrapping it around a dead body, bringing it could be what's holding them together, almost like duct tape.
There's a story to be told. Some of it I know, but some of it I don't. So we look forward to seeing it unfold. I don't want to squash anybody's speculation right now, but I think we're going to find more of an answer about what that red and the gold are. Maybe.
All I know is I want an action figure.
Well,
figure.
tomorrow Hasbro's having a big the HasCon or Hasbro or con is happening tomorrow, and there's a panel right around noon Eastern tomorrow where they are going to reveal some Star Wars stuff, and I'm absolutely certain that Hasbro cannot wait to repaint stormtrooper figures with every variant you can imagine and sell them over and over and over and over. This is a absolute a cash cow for Hasbro. I'm certain of it. I'm certain of it. Mike Porter says, I've got a joke for tomorrow. Oh, we're looking forward to that.
Awesome.
All right. Well, hey, you all, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. It's always the highlight of my day to get to spend some time with all of you talking about Star Wars. And Astromech Jeremy, he says, all I know is if I see 3PO next week, you'll hear my squeal from New York City.
That's awesome.
I'll be listening for it, bud.
Yep. Yeah. I'll hear it. I'm pretty close to New York. I'll hear it.
Meg will hear it across the pond.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. Astromech Jeremy is a great member of Meg's community, and he's fantastic here as well. Really cool guy. I can't say that enough. He's a really cool guy. If you guys don't know much about him,
we cross paths in the Twitterverse.
I follow him on Twitter. I've seen him around a lot. He's a good dude.
He's really cool. He's really cool. You don't see many people in your life as cool as he is. I'm just saying. Especially if you're a big nerd like me. So there you go. Santa's my agent. I wish. All right. Well, thank you all again, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Of course, you guys know where to find Star Wars Meg. And you should be following her on YouTube and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and Patreon. Meg releases some pretty good content on Patreon. If you're not supporting her there, you should. And Roland, tell us just a little bit more about what you're doing outside of just visiting my channel.
So you saw RG Energy in chat earlier. You go follow his channel. That's my co-host. We run the Rollover Mcast every Wednesday around 12:30, 12:45. It's always reposted. And just me personally, I'm working on my own channel to get it set up. I'm working on getting my banner done and working on getting my profile picture right. And then I'll be banging out videos like nobody's business. But if you want to find me and what I have to talk about, I'm on Twitter at Rollo Lord or the Grand Admiral Rollo. And you can also find me on Instagram at Rollo_films if you want to see some cool little music videos and edits and stuff. I do Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, anime, whatever. So
very good. And of course, Rural Farm Boy, he supports all the channels. He's like Mike Porter, but just different. Right? You can find Rural Farm Boy on Twitter. He's reposting things like Mike does. He's in the chat with all of us. You can find him everywhere. He's an old dude like me. We've been here since the beginning, and it's great to have somebody else that's been here so long and been through all this time as a Star Wars fan. So thanks for being here, Rural Farm Boy. I appreciate it.
I always
Am
say.
Am I right to say you're also on the Blue Milk podcast?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, I want to shout out John Graber real quick too.
Yeah, Jeff and I sit down Saturday mornings or Sundays whenever he's available, because I have more time available to me than most folks in our fandom or the momentary folks out in the real world. I had literally it started with my audio podcast I listened to that I've been listening for what's going to be 13 years now. And you listen to these folks every week, and you get to know them as the folks that they are. And I'm thinking, I want to be friends with these people. And I didn't want nothing to do with the Twitterverse. So then I took a look, 2018, and I said, they're all there. I can go do that. And then I kept thinking, I'm like, what can I do for them? Because they've been doing this for me, some of them for over 10 years. So I thought, well, I'll share out what I'm listening to, and hopefully somebody else will pick out that I've heard this and give that a listen too. So now I do that with my YouTube friends. It's like when I share out Meg, I just finished, I'm in the middle of watching, and I'm like, go give her a look.
Right.
So any little bit that I think I can do to help you out, because you're doing that for us, you're the reason I do what I do.
100% agree.
Not about you. not about me. It's about the folks I'm listening to or watching. It's about.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Hey, Meg, if you can, hang on to this 1 second after the show.
No problem.
All
Sam,
right.
I have one thing to say real quick.
Yeah.
Because I know he's a big supporter or like big watcher of your channel. Friday nights, John Graber puts the link in his chat. John Graber, the space jockey. We have a lot of fun on there with all these different great people, and we just love talking about Star Wars and stuff. So
Wonderful.
shout out to
Wonderful.
John.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Roland, and thanks for joining again.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
I'm going to let you all go and have a wonderful day. We'll see you again tomorrow as we talk about some more Star Wars. And until then, my friends, Merry Christmas, and may the Force be with you always. Bye-bye.